Guys, this is Lee from DFS Advisor. Just wanted to take a few minutes here to go through my cash lineup from today's EPL slate on DraftKings. This is the single entry $5 double up on the main slate. As you can see, there's a very good cash lineup this week. Came in third overall out of 229 entrants. And looking at this slate from a cash perspective, the first thing that I wanted to do was see where I was going to get my Chelsea and Tottenham exposure, as those were the two biggest favorites. The problem was a lot of the players were really priced up. For example, Kane at 12K, I just felt like was too much, and I didn't like where my roster ended up when I tried to fit him in. Willian was also expensive, but obviously he did not start, so we didn't have to worry about that. So once I saw the lineup from Chelsea, Fabregas was a lock for me. He was going to have a monopoly on sets, obviously, and that was the first place I went. Um, Forwards were tough this week, and Moses at only 5,600 was really cheap. And although he doesn't have much upside, I stuck him in there just because it made the rest of the lineup a lot easier. And obviously that paid off. But as you can see, he was only 8% owned, so not many people went that route. Um, I was planning on playing Andros Townsend at the beginning of the week. Then I found out he was out injured. Then I thought Cabaye was a lock with Townsend out. Well, Cabaye didn't start either. And so at that point, I went to Sacco because in the past he has taken set pieces when he's on the field. And he's also just very active. He can draw fouls, he takes shots. And obviously, he really panned out with the goal. But even without that goal, he would have had 8.75 points. And at 5,000, that really would have been fine. And obviously, a lot of people picked up on that as he was at 43% owned. Now, let's look at the second forward spot for a minute. Um, in terms of getting Tottenham exposure, I knew that I was going to go with Aurier. Trippier had started early in the week, so with the way Poch rotates his fullbacks, I could almost guarantee that Aurier was going to be in there. But needless to say, if he didn't start, I could have thrown Davies in there. Again, he panned out really well at fairly low ownership as he got the first assist of the game. Um, but anyway, I wasn't going to play Kane. Um, Set pieces are so spread out on Tottenham now that I just couldn't trust Eriksen either. Dele Alli is too hit or miss. And so really that left Son. And, one of the things I did was I went back and I looked, and he had scored a goal in 5 straight matches at home at Wembley. So I liked that. I think the bigger field helps him take players on, and he's just been in good form overall. So I threw him in there, even though he's not your typical cash play. I thought about Richarlison for quite a while, and I think he had a solid 10.5 points. But I wanted to expose myself to some upside, and I think Son did that without sacrificing too much of a floor as compared to Richarlison. And so one of the most important things about getting Tottenham exposure this week was I had Aurier and Son in there, and with that salary, it also allowed you to go from Son to Kane and then down to one of the Everton center backs. So in a bunch of my head-to-head matchups where I was leading after the early games, I looked and I have this rotor grinders tool that'll tell you how much salary your opponents have left to play, and I could see that a lot of my head-to-head opponents had Kane left, and although I was up by, like 20, 30, even 40, 50 points in some of these matchups. Kane could have a hat trick and Son could have a dud, and I could have lost. So, in those matchups, what I did was I just decided to block, and I took out Son and stuck Kane in there, and then put Holgate in for Aurier. And funny enough, I didn't expect anything out of Holgate, but he actually ended up with like 10.5 points, I think. Let's see where else. So the other midfield spot I hadn't touched on yet. I went with Richie. He obviously didn't have a great game, but he has a near monopoly of set pieces. Playing at home as a favored team against Swansea, who's at the bottom of the table, it just made a lot of sense to play him here. Although the result wasn't great, I think the play was the right one. Um, okay, the other defender spot, after I paid up for Aurier, I knew I'd have to pay down, and I was at about $4,100 left. So there were a few guys. Olsen was at that price. Ziegler was at that price as well. The reason I ended up going with Dawson is uh, he, I felt like he had a good chance to get a clean sheet with West Brom hosting Brighton at home. And he plays center back and right back, but when he does play right back, he's very active, um, and he is known to pop up with set piece goals. He did it last season a few times, and so again, it was one of those situations where I felt his floor, might not have been as good as Ziegler or Olsen from crossing, but when you had the upside from the clean sheet and a goal, albeit that's going to happen rarely, I felt like that was worth sacrificing one or two 4 points even in a cash lineup. So that's how I got Dawson in there, and obviously that worked out very well. Finally, I'm looking at Wayne Hennessy here, my keeper, only 2.2% owned, which I find kind of crazy. If you had looked at our goalkeeper projections for this week, Hennessy was the best value. Crystal Palace have been playing really well of late, and Burnley have been playing very poorly of late. So I like the matchup overall, and it kind of coincided with the projections, which showed Hennessy as the best value. The other keepers I considered were Fabianski. He came very close to getting a win and clean sheet, but conceded late. Still ended up with 4 points. Um, I thought about Ben Foster from West Brom as well. I never really considered going up to Courtois or Lloris just because they were a little pricey. But the spreadsheet with the goalkeeper projections definitely worked out very well this week, and Hennessy performed. Um, yeah, so that's basically my mindset and process in coming up with this cash lineup. Unfortunately, I didn't play it in any GPPs. Otherwise, it would have been a huge week. Um, so anyway, I hope that was helpful for some of you guys to kind of walk through the process of how I constructed this lineup. Something I plan to try to do on a weekly basis. So be sure to check back after next weekend. And in the meantime, um, be sure and check out the projections we post. Um, our next content will probably be on Thursday or Friday for next weekend's EPL slate. And definitely come check it out. I mean, if you had read the preview article this week, you would have seen Hennessy as the top keeper. Aurier was mentioned, Fabregas was mentioned, Son was mentioned, as was Moses and Saka. So if you got those guys in, you definitely had a positive ROI today. All right, thanks for checking out the video, guys.